Hold on, give me a second. Yeah, it's the good stuff. Hell, have y'all been to a Five Guys lately? Them MFs be charging like they some luxury Italian restaurant. 18 bucks for a double cheeseburger and fries, you out of your mind. This video's about cars, so yeah, back to cars. Anyways, numbers. Y'all love numbers, right? So I've been watching a select few cars and their prices over the past 2 years, and Car Gurus is a neat tool you can use actually that just straight up tells you the prices that they've averaged and collected through the sales over the years. Now, of course, I kind of gave up on most of these charts since last year, since I was just watching them go to new hopelessly high highs each time I checked, but in the past 2 weeks I had this weird, irking sensation to check Car Gurus again, and as I did, I found myself finally able to use a word I've wanted to use in 3 years. Depreciation. I noticed some cars are depreciating again. Hallelujah. Despite it being summertime, which is usually the highest time for sports car prices, we've seen a decent amount of sports coupes actually fall in price. Pretty substantially too, so not like 1 or 2% or like $1,000, $2,000. We're talking a pretty decent falls. This is completely counter to the stupidity we've witnessed just a few months ago in winter when cars hit their peak high from November 2022 to February 2023. With March 2023 being the beginning of some downfalls. Let's talk about some of the findings that I saw. A C5 Corvette is able to be bought for between 10 to 15 grand with pretty decent mileage, just like it could in 2017 to 2019. Aston Martin Vanquishes are now under 100 grand. That's a 300 grand brand new car, by the way, that easily still sold for 150 to 180 grand last year, and it's now very regularly seen under 100 grand. Again, most of you watching probably won't go out and buy Vanquish, but the reason I mention this is that's a substantial drop, like a 60 grand difference. Some of these models still have like pretty low miles too. Like when I checked last year, they had around 20 to 40,000 miles. A lot of these models still have 20 to 40,000 miles, yet are going for $90,000. Maserati prices are a very interesting one because they actually completely missed out on the car inflation. They actually stagnated from the pandemic onwards, which is very strange, which in itself is still, I guess, better than the usual route of depreciation, but that's a telltale sign that they're not really highly sought after, because if every other car started to go up in price but they just stagnated, again, they weren't dropping at least, that did mean that when the drop finally reinstated, or that the market or economy finally caught up, the depreciation was gonna hit hard on these, and boy did it hit hard. These cars, is even the NC Stradale models, are basically valued by Car Gurus internally as 27 grand. So while most dealerships are huffing copium and trying to list them for 33 grand, Car Gurus is projecting that they will continue to fall based on their plummeting prices already, and again based on the fact that they are probably one of the least desired luxury commodities amongst cars because they completely missed the inflation period that every other car was going through during the quarantine. Mustang GTs, S197s, and new edges can easily be bought for below 10 grand. This was their projected pre-pandemic route that they were headed. Quarantine happened, a lot of them actually went up in value, with some S197 GTs even getting to 20 grand, which is an absurd price to pay for cars that at the time were 15 years old, now almost coming up to 20 years old. So it's good to see that they've just gone back to the price they were at pre-pandemic, and then give them a few more months and they might actually get back on the track of depreciation and falling even further than where they are now. Those are just some examples I wanted to give. I don't want to sit here forever and just list numbers out to you. Kelley Blue Book has projected cars are going to continue to fall in prices, if not even fall into a plummet. A lot of news articles are also speculating this, so a lot of us kind of have our fingers crossed, and it depends on what side of the fence you are. If you're someone who bought a car very recently and you bought it at the highest high, this is not a very fun experience for you. But unfortunately, I did try my best to warn people that, hey, don't really buy cars right now. There's no way they're going to sustain these prices. They're going to give in. So what changed? Did consumers magically become smarter? Did we finally realize we weren't supposed to be buying these expensive prices? Of course not. Consumers are stupid as hell. Okay, maybe that's giving consumers a bit too little credit, but in reality, my videos as well as other content creators likely don't make a noticeable dent in the overall mindset or ideology of consumers. what does make a noticeable dent in their actions is their inability to purchase things or act upon their desires. Banks, let's just be real here, haven't been doing very great lately. Loans, interest rates, all the above, while they were spiraling out of control and I did predict that they couldn't sustain this, there eventually comes a point where their greediness actually outruns itself, because it's not that the consumer wisens up to their greediness, it's that their greediness finally can't subvert government or worldwide decisions that are just happening. What I mean by that is, if people's purchasing power goes down against any capability, like they're not able to help it, it's just worldwide inflation and a whole bunch of other factors, their desires finally take a back seat. So even the dumbest, most financially stupid clout goblin cannot act upon their desire to go take a 29.99% APR loan on a 80 grand Hellcat anymore, because the banks themselves are really like, we're rejecting you. Then they go to a loan shark, and even the loan sharks are like, my guy, we're not doing very well. Things are tough right now. I'm gonna reject you. And there comes the point where they finally can't act on their desires, which finally means that dealership doesn't have an incentive to mark up the car, because they've been marking up cars because some morons have been lining up to buy the cars. And this is you immediately heard my voice get more exciting here because this excited me more than anything. Dealerships were usually the last ones to adapt or to change because obviously they're greedy, they don't care about us. But it got to a point where they'd be like, hey, I've got a customer, they walked in, they want to buy this car, and here's their credit score, here's the loan application, and they send that to the bank that they usually work with. But like I said, banks aren't doing too well, the economy's very rocky right now, and there's a lot of world situations going on right now that affected that, because inflation did not just magically appear. One of the reasons food is super expensive right now is because two of the largest producers of grain in the world are kind of sort of doing this right now. So because of that, we're all feeling multiple financial impacts through a series of waves that I knew was going to eventually catch up. I was like, there's no way we can sustain this. Once the banks were like, look, we're really struggling, we're not going to approve that loan for that guy. Guess what? The dealership finally has to adapt. The people who finally list and choose these corrupt, overly stupid car prices finally have to give in. So it's not so much the consumers got smarter, because like I said, that's horrible as it sounds, it's putting too much faith in the consumers, especially the modern day consumer. The prices have nowhere to go but down. They got cornered, where dealerships can't get away with marking up as much anymore. I'm sure some still will, some will still huff copium, some will still try to milk every little bit last drop out of the people who still do have money, or just haven't understood what's going on right now. So if you found this video and thought about buying a car, hold those horses, alright? I would seriously recommend waiting until this winter, because car prices usually fall in the winter, compounded with the fact that they've been on the fall for 3 months now. You've got nothing but good news ahead of you. I'm absolutely sick of the fact that car transactions were one of the weirder places that for 3 years now where people could get actively upsold, actively verbally abused, actively taken advantage of, and still make the purchase. There's so few places in the world where consumers can be treated as crap as they have been with cars in the past 3 years and still end up buying the product. But before I derail too far, back to this video and the topic at hand. It's good to see some cars are going down again, that cracks are beginning to show and even widened. So far, a lot of normal cars are still going strong in their normal MSRP, like Civics, Corollas, and whatnot are considered staple purchases and more of a necessity by the general public, so they still have a somewhat steady flow of customers coming in because they're kind of a basic choice. However, the first signs that an industry is starting to crack around the seams is usually when the luxury items of that industry start to go down in the price. So seeing luxury cars and sports cars finally begin to have consistent price drops, it's a good sign for the industry as a whole. Now, to explain this to people who aren't super great with economics, this means that the price of normal items like Civics and Corollas will eventually fall as well, and there's actually logic behind this. Do you really think Mustangs, Corvettes, and Maseratis and like BMWs will just keep dropping to the point they're like 5 times cheaper than a Civic? The reality is, if the luxury item becomes cheaper than the normal item, consumers will start to buy the luxury item and use it as a normal item. If a luxury car became 5 to 10 grand, even if it only moves for 1 or 2 years, they would rather buy that than buy 40 grand mark the crap up Toyota or Honda. So obviously Honda and Toyota are not stupid. When they see that prices drop, at first they let luxury items fall because they're like, well, luxury items are priced way above us, so they can fall a bit while we maintain our current prices still to kind of break even and milk as much as we can from customers who still walk in through our doors and want to buy our cars. But finally, when luxury prices get too within spitting range, like I said, where it starts to actually make more sense to buy BMWs and Maseratis and Mercedes instead of a Toyota or Honda, then they're like, well, we gotta drop prices so people still buy our cars. So trust me, normal cars will be on their way down too. So if you don't want a luxury branded vehicle, you want something like a reliable Honda, Toyota, or even if you want a Nissan or Lexus, they will have to give in to these price changes. Probably not yet, but probably 6 months down the line, because once luxury cars get too cheap, it will start to make too much sense to buy them. And trust me, most industries and economics and just how it works, usually the normal item will catch on and be like, okay, we gotta compete with the luxury items that are now way cheaper than they have any right being, so we gotta go down too. It's great to see, like this whole car supply shortage, I called that out last year. From a quarantine that started 3 years ago, the car supply shortage was total BS, where a lot of dealers actually, if you have like abandoned outlet malls near you, and this is how I found this out behind the scenes, where they actually had more cars available but didn't put it on their dealership lot. They just stored it at like some abandoned mall or outlet or big parking lot that's somewhere else, so they weren't in front of your eyes, so they can create what's called an artificial scarcity, where they're like, oh, cars are still on shortage from the quarantine, production hasn't caught up. BS. It's been 3 years. Now though, it's a lot harder to hide that, because when I started to drive by some of those outlet malls, I noticed their backup lots are full, and then the main dealership lot is also full. So that excuse of the car supply shortage is total BS, and I'm so glad many journalists took note. I'm so glad a lot of articles took note, and I'm so glad content creators took note. The final point I'd like to make before I end this video is, do not go out and just buy your dream car just quite yet. If we all rush out to buy cars again, we'll drive up demand. In truth, a single video that I make would not contribute one way or the other, but like I said, when banks, agencies, and even the governments of certain areas are giving in, there's only so much a small dealership can do. So the reason I would tell people to not just immediately go out and buy a car while prices have shown signs of dropping is that, realistically speaking, we've not hit rock bottom yet. I mean, you don't have to wait for rock bottom, but we have yet to see the plummet or free fall. If you're someone who's super impatient, I would say try to hold out until winter, and 6 months from now, that car you might want to buy might be 10, even 20% cheaper than when it was now. So that's several thousand we're talking about. If you really want to wait till rock bottom, even give yourself a year before you buy a car. Anyways, I hope this video helped y'all, or at least lifted your spirits, because legit it has lifted mine. So keep your eyes peeled. Your dream car's price might soon fall into your range, so be ready to buy it then. But until then, subscribe and check out more of my automotive content. Share this video to your fellow car enthusiasts. Yes, no pet meme this time, because I do think every car enthusiast, as many of them as possible, need to know to prepare for the upcoming storm. See y'all next time. Blade Angel out.